To a few minutes of like a halachic issue that sort of comes up in the parsha, and then we'll see where that takes us, like hashkafically, a very, very important yesod. So in this week's parsha we have the mitzvah of the carbon tamid. What was the carbon tamid? So we know that in the Beis Hamikdash, amongst the karbanos that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash, amongst the sacrifices, there was such a thing called the carbon tamid, which is that every morning and every evening a specific type of carbon was brought. The carbon ola, it's called the carbon tamid. Tamid shel shachar, tamid of the morning, carbon shel ben arbaim of the afternoon. That's the mitzvah. Now if you think about it, there's a number of mitzvahs, both in terms of the Beis Hamikdash and in terms of mitzvahs that we do nowadays, which sort of fit that format of something that we do in the morning and something we do at night. We do the same thing, but we do it twice a day. So for example, in the Beis Hamikdash, as I mentioned, the carbon of the morning, tamid shel shachar, tamid shel ben arbaim. You have a similar thing with the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. They would light it in the morning, light it in the afternoon, towards the evening. Other mitzvahs like that. Nowadays also we have a mitzvah like that. For example, Shema, right? We say Shema in the morning, Shema at night. So the question is like this. We know that the Rishonim spent a lot of time, a lot of the sages spent a lot of time figuring out the list of the 613 mitzvahs. We know there's such an idea that we have 613 mitzvahs, but the Gemara, the Talmud doesn't tell us what exactly makes the cut, what's part of the list, what's not part of the list. So the question is, how do you count these mitzvahs that are done twice a day? It's the same thing, but you're doing it twice a day. Do you count it as one mitzvah, or do you count it as two mitzvahs? Because you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it at different times. So how do you categorize that? So that's a big debate amongst the Rishonim. It's a big debate. For example, the Rambam held that you count them as individual things. There's the mitzvah of the morning, that's one thing, that's mitzvah one, and a separate mitzvah is what you do in the afternoon. So Kriya Shema in the morning is one mitzvah, Kriya Shema at night is another mitzvah. The carbon that they brought in the morning was one mitzvah, the carbon that they brought at night was a different mitzvah. Two separate things. And on the opposite side of the camp you have, let's say, the Ramban disagrees, the Ramban says no, although you're doing it two separate things, but it's the same thing, you're doing it twice, that's counted as one mitzvah. Okay, that's the debate amongst the Rishonim, Ramban, and so on. Here's the issue. The issue is that one of the great Gaonim that we had was Reb Saji Gaon. Reb Saji Gaon basically, whenever he deals with mitzvahs like this, that again, it's done in the morning and repeated again at night, the general approach of Reb Saji Gaon is they count them as two separate mitzvahs. So for example, Kriya Shema, Reb Saji Gaon says Kriya Shema in the morning, that's one mitzvah, Kriya Shema at night, another mitzvah. Lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, one in the morning, one at night, two separate mitzvahs, and so on and so forth. The exception to that is the tamid, this carbon that was brought on the altar in the Beis Hamikdash in the morning and at night. Reb Saji Gaon counts as one mitzvah. So that's the question. If Reb Saji Gaon, he should be consistent. When it comes to Kriya Shema, he counts them as two separate things. When it comes to everything else that we do, morning and at night, two separate things. Why is this different? Why is the carbon tamid different? So the truth is, if you take a look at the language that Torah uses to describe this carbon, this sacrifice, and you'll see in a few minutes like why I'm talking about this, you'll see that there's a specific pasuk that describes this entire carbon that's done in the morning and at night, and the words are Oilas tamid tiya al mizbeach, that there should always be a sacrifice on the mizbeach. Oilas tamid, that this carbon that's being brought in the morning and at night, it's called an oilas tamid. It's called a constant carbon, which means the following idea. There are certain things that a person does very, very often, right? And so fine, you do this very, very often, it's your go-to thing. When you do something very, very often, again, let's say Kriya Shema, you do in the morning and you do it at night, so fine, it's twice a day, Reb Saji Gaon holds, you count it as two separate mitzvahs. The chiddush, what's different about this carbon is the following thing, is that Reb Saji Gaon held that the fundamental concept of this carbon is that there should always be a sacrifice on the altar. The mitzvah is that it should always be a sacrifice. What does it mean, always? Always means if you do it, always on the altar. You follow? So it's not that, see, when it comes to Kriya Shema, so it's not that you're always saying Kriya Shema. You say Kriya Shema in the morning, stop, and then a bunch of hours later you say Kriya Shema at night. So says Reb Saji Gaon, those are two separate mitzvahs. But says Reb Saji Gaon, when it comes to the carbon that's brought on the altar, it's not that you do it, you bring a carbon in the morning, stop. Hours later, you bring another carbon at night. That's not the pshat. That's not the concept. The concept is oilas tamid. The Torah wants there to always be a sacrifice on the altar. What does it mean always? It means every single second you have to sacrifice an animal? No. When I say always, if you do in the morning and at night, then to me, says God, it's as if it's always on the altar. That's the concept. And therefore, B'sad Goin counts this as one mitzvah because it's one continuous status. The status is there's always a sacrifice on the altar. How do I make it as if it's always? In the morning and at night. I'll give you another example of this. We find this that there's something about the altar, something about that the mizbeach with sacrifices, that things that are done morning and at night make it as if it's always there. Another example of this, there's a mitzvah in the Torah which is Eish Tamid Tiyah al Mizbeach. There should always be a fire on the altar. We talked about sacrifices, but even outside of sacrifices, there should always be a fire. What does that mean, always be a fire? So the Rambam says it doesn't mean literally that there should always be a fire every single second, but it means light a fire in the morning and light a fire in the evening. And by having the fire in the morning and the evening, it's as if it's always on. So we have this idea that again, whenever we're dealing with sacrifices and specifically altar-related things, by the actions that we do, by them being consistent, both morning and at night, it makes it as if those actions are always. That's the chiddush. Now, more than that, we actually find that this affects practical halacha as well. I'll give you an example. We know that the halacha is the concept of davening. Tefillah, the mitzvah of tefillah that we have, we know, the Gemara tells us, was modeled after sacrifices. So, for example, the carbon in the morning, that's shachris, right? The carbon in the evening, that'll be mincha, and so on and so on.